The Economics of Happiness, created by Brandy Bleacher, Benjamin Payne, Amy Hoover, and Michael Hooft. We are Group 3, and we're doing Topic B. The Happiness Research Institute. What is it? The Happiness Research Institute is an independent think tank of researchers that study the happiness and well-being of citizens around the world. They use their findings to inform decision-makers in various countries what is affecting human happiness. The goal is to help improve the overall quality of life. What are the indicators used to find the happiness nation on Earth? Here are the 9 of them. Psychological well-being. Studies indicate that people with a more centered psychological well-being live happier and more balanced lives. Health. Through good health, both maintained physically and mentally, life happiness can be achieved. Education. Through education, we can afford to provide ourselves with a better work and leisure balance. Time use. A happy, well-centered person will have learned to manage their time. Culture diversity. Being able to recognize one culture importance while maintaining a positive and accepting of others and showing empathy and tolerance. Good governance. Public entitles practice positive interaction and maintain ethical behavior. Community vitality. A community's ability to manage and adapt to a change. Ecological diversity. Adapting to change in the environment as a public. Lastly, living standards. A balance of a public level of comfort, usually based on money.
The World Happiness Report is published annually by the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. It ranks countries from most happy to least happy based on responses to a worldwide poll on overall life satisfaction. This polling is conducted by Gallup. The report correlates the rankings with 6 fundamental factors and attempts to determine to what extent each of the factors explains each country's overall happiness score. These factors are healthy life expectancy, social support, GDP per capita, perceived levels of corruption, generosity, and the freedom to make key life decisions. There is also a residual component of the happiness score, which accounts for the baseline level of happiness enjoyed by all people. Through statistical analysis, the authors of the report determine how important each of these factors are in making people happy. While GDP per capita is included in the World Happiness Report analysis and can be inferred in the Happiness Research Institute's domain of living standards, it is one of several factors. GDP per capita is often the single largest factor in a country's happiness, according to the World Happiness Report, but in the ultimate result, it is always outweighed by the combination of the other 5 factors. Many of these factors are not measured by GDP, and looking at a country's GDP by itself gives no clear indication of how a higher or lower GDP may be affecting the overall happiness of that country. While money can buy things that may make people happy, there is no way to know whether the things it buys actually are making people happy. For example, there is no metric built into the GDP for determining whether the portion spent on healthcare is leading to people living longer, healthier lives. It is worth noting that of the top 10 countries in the World Happiness Report's rankings, 8 have a GDP per capita lower than the United States, which is 20th in the rankings this year. The report has consistently shown that GDP per capita by itself is not a reliable predictor of happiness.
Raw GDP per capita may be less important for a country's happiness than the actual distribution of that country's GDP. Finland, Denmark, and Norway are all countries that consistently rank highly in the happiness ratings and all have more equitable distribution of wealth and income than the United States. In 2018, the top 10% of U.S. adults had a 45.6% share of the national income, while the bottom 50% had a 13.3% share. In Finland, the respective shares were 33.6% and 21.6% in the same year. How could the United States attain greater happiness for citizens? One of the biggest things that the United States could do to attain greater happiness for its citizens is a better healthcare system. In 2019, 8% of the population did not have health insurance, which amounts to 26.1 million uninsured individuals. Universal health care would eliminate this problem, save on administrative costs associated with insurance, and lead to a healthier and more productive populace. In the United States, the cost of healthcare is too high for many people to obtain insurance. Not only that, but there are times that even when someone does have insurance, they can pay a cheaper amount by opting to self-pay instead of going through insurance, which shows the United States has a broken healthcare system. More specifically in healthcare would be improved paid family leave. The United States is the only developed country in the world that does not mandate paid family leave for new parents. Instituting this policy would allow parents to spend more time with their newborns, helping to strengthen family bonds and resulting in greater happiness for both parents and children.
How could the United States attain greater happiness for its citizens? Part 2. Equitable distribution of wealth and income. Many of the countries that are consistently happier than the United States are countries where the gap between the classes is less pronounced. Changing public policy to nudge lower and middle class wages upwards could improve the situation. Another way is to embrace a collectivist rather than individualistic cultural orientation. A collectivist orientation is one where the goals of the group take priority, whereas an individualistic one is where people are more focused on their own individual goals. And that's the culture that we have adapted here in the United States. America's individualistic pursuit of happiness has a tendency to promote quite the opposite and cause unhappiness. However, this can be changed if we focus on building stronger social relationships and focus more on each other rather than ourselves. By prioritizing the pursuit of happiness of our community, we ourselves can become happier. Should the U.S. make policy changes for the sake of happiness? Some countries that are happier than the United States have lower GDP per capita, but it is possible that as a result of implementing policies to improve happiness, the United States GDP per capita may decline. Whether to move forward with pro-happiness policy changes, given this possibility, is a question of the end goal of economic policy. If GDP and pure economic efficiency is an end in itself, then happiness is irrelevant and apart from its effect on GDP. If GDP is a means to achieving happiness, however, any decline in GDP is worth the policy change if the net result is increased happiness for all citizens. This has been our presentation on the economics of happiness. Thank you so much for watching.